Time now for our In Focus segment, in which we are discussing about India-USI stronger trade relationship. And joining me are two very special guests, Ambassador Meera Shankar and Professor Sreeram Chaulia. Ambassador Shankar is a former Indian envoy to the US, and Professor Chaulia is a Dean, Jindal School of International Affairs. Welcome to both my guests. Professor Chaulia, coming to you now, looking at the issues covered, the discussions, the tone and tenor over the last couple of days in New Delhi, what do you think are the sticking points? We have spoken about visa issues, mobility, totalization agreement and tariffs and so on and so forth, but are both sides any closer to resolving the differences? I mean, what's your sense, after the talks ended in New Delhi a short while ago?
Well, Ramesh, definitely it's more positive than in the Trump era. No question about it. Katherine is a bit of a moderate compared to Robert Lighthizer, who was Trump's US trade representative and was making demand after demand, in a very aggressive fashion, because that was their politics.
Right.
So the current administration in the US is more liberal. So they are making a distinction between China on one side and all the other countries with whom they have trade deficits. So China, they are not relaxing the tariffs that Trump had imposed, but with other countries, they are like South Korea or Japan and India, which are allies or strategic partners, they've got a different approach. So to that extent, they are making the right call. I think sticking points, the digital trade is one area on which, increasingly the volumes are rising. So nearly $150 billion, more and more increasingly the flow of data and digital products and services is increasing. So this is where, there is a difference of opinion. The Americans, who are backed by their big tech companies, they want very limited or no restrictions on their ability to store data in India, take data out of the country, and also on customs on digital goods that are crisscrossing both sides. There is a proposal to impose customs duties on countries on companies that are making profit in India through digital means. So, and they don't want to keep the data of Indian citizens here because it will cost them money, the big tech companies of the US. So they are lobbying the US trade representative to take a hard line on these kind of questions. But I think it's always a give and take, like Ambassador Meera Shankar is saying. And the other thing is, Piyush Goyalji, our Commerce Minister, made an important point about fairness.
Right.
And he has made, the point that the levels of prosperity or economic development of India and the US are not the same. So when they are demanding more and more market access and saying our average tariffs are so high, it's like comparing chalk and cheese, right? I mean, a country with 50,000 US dollars per capita income cannot be compared with one which has less than $5,000 per capita income. So I think we are going to continue to stick to some of our sensitive points, like agriculture, for example. This is matters to the livelihood of hundreds of millions of people, of farmers in our country. So I think the US hopes that they can open up more. Even the GSP, if they restore GSP, in return they are expecting more market access. So that mini deal that was being talked about has not happened.
Okay.
And I think that now with the restarting of the Trade Policy Forum, in a way, the Biden administration is indicating that their interest is more in trying to resolve nitty-gritties than to get some kind of a big package agreement.
True.
So I think we may move forward. The key goal is, Piyush Goyalji has said, and the vision is $1 trillion bilateral trade per annum between India and the US by 2030.
Right.
If for us to achieve that, we have to grow. Our growth trajectory is looking good. Jeffries, the brokerage firm, the US brokerage firm, has said, we are now in a sweet spot. We are recovering fast from COVID-19, and they expect that we will generate the same amount of growth that we saw first during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government in 2003. 8 to 9%, and over a sustained period of time. Once that happens, and our exports are also started booming in the last 1 year or so, and they are actually generating a lot more foreign exchange for us than before. So there are some bright spots in the Indian economy. So I think we will be more open, and Piyush Goyalji was saying that eventually we want to be a more open economy, and that is possible once we have a stronger export engine, right? We tend to be defensive because we don't have much to export. But once we have that, we have more chips on the table for bargaining with the US. So I think if you take a medium to long run view, unless a Trump-like regime comes back again, I think it is smooth sailing, and it is only going to go up from 150. We should aim to double and triple it, and ultimately reach 1 trillion, which is the gold standard.
And finally, Professor Chaulia, looking ahead now, there's no denying that economy is one of the pillars of the India-US relationship. What's the next big idea, so to speak, on the India-US front, number one? And number two, when we look at the regional context, a lot of focus on resilient supply chains in the post-COVID world order. What's the scope for both countries to collaborate on that front as well going forward?
Well, Ramesh, resilient supply chains is indeed the next frontier. We are looking to diversify US investments away from mainland China and to attract more of it to us.
Right.
And that is a very critical goal. And Dr. Jaishankar spoke to Katherine as well. And this was the message that we are open for business and we would like to attract more American investments. Prime Minister, during his last visit, you will recall, Ramesh, he made a big pitch to major American companies to increase their investments. So the volumes have to go up, and that will automatically also resolve whatever, the so-called trade deficit problem that the US sometimes brings up. I mean, 23 billion is manageable. It's not very high in goods. And in services, I think we can export a lot more. So we should be looking at how, some of the disenchanted investors from China who are fleeing could come to us, and that is ultimately the make or break point, because that can quadruple or quintuple the volumes of economic exchanges between India and the United States. It's not just trade, investment agreement also is on the cards, and that will also, a bilateral investment agreement will speed up the processes. And Prime Minister said that, open window for US companies, we will do anything to attract American capital because the volumes are big, and when they come, they stay and they generate local jobs, and they create wealth in our country, and that's what we want.
Absolutely. On that note, may I thank both my guests, Professor Sreeram Chaulia and Ambassador Meera Shankar, for sharing your insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Appreciate it.